Welcome back. You're still watching Network Africa on Channels Television. Well, if you thought things were tough in Egypt, they're about to get tougher. The Egyptian President Abdul Fattah Al-Sisi has approved stringent new counter-terrorism laws to fight a growing jihadist insurgency. The laws establish special courts and offer additional protection from legal consequences for military and police officers who have used force. They also impose the death penalty for anyone found guilty of setting up or leading a terrorist organization. President Sisi vowed to bring in tough new counter-terrorism legislation in June following the assassination by car bomb of the Prosecutor General Hisham Barakat, and from the activities of today, he certainly kept his word. Let's just show you some of the excerpts of that new law, that new anti-terror law, which is 5 years, and they could face even more years behind bars. Now, if a person is caught inciting violence or creating websites deemed to spread terrorist messages, it will carry sentences of up to 5 to 7 years. Journalists can be fined between 200,000 and 500,000 Egyptian pounds. That's about £16,300 to £41,000 for contradicting official accounts of militant attacks. Well, we go live to Cairo, where the Voice of America's Heather Murdoch is standing by. Heather, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, how are people reacting to this new anti-terror law?
Here in Egypt, people are equally and passionately both for and against the law. People that support the government will say that this law will make Egypt more safe, and it's been a very tumultuous past several years since the uprising in 2011. But a lot of other people will also say that they hate the law. They say that it's a tool to squash any opposition, not just the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the stated enemy of the Egyptian government, deemed a terrorist organization. But they say that this law can be used to squash other peaceful opposition groups. So it's just another thing that is a bit divisive here. There's also a problem with the fact that there's no parliament in place right now. So a lot of people simply have a problem with the fact that the executive branch passed a law without the oversight of a parliament representing the people.
Now, from what we gather, Heather, we understand that some critics, those who do not favor this law, are saying that it's basically limiting or trying to shut down press freedom. Do you think that's the case?
It's hard to imagine how the effect of this law will not be shutting down press freedom. There's a lot of self-censorship in Egypt already. A lot of that has to do with just the positions of the people who own the newspapers. If people can expect a massive fine for writing a story that's not along the same lines of the story the government has put out, then they're much more likely simply not to write a story at all, or just to print whatever the government says to print, because it's a great personal impact if you have such a large fine. The ministries themselves don't seem to be very clear about how this law is going to be enforced yet, though. So this is one thing we're waiting to see, because it seems very impractical to be able to fine major media houses all around the world. So we're hoping they will have a press conference for us soon and answer some of the questions journalists have, foreign journalists and local journalists, about what exactly they mean by this.
Now, speaking of journalists, are we likely to see, for instance, what might be happening in Burundi happen in Egypt? And by that I mean a case where we only see more of state-run media outlets based on this new law, and, you know, private media organizations probably being sanctioned or shut down.
Yes, I mean, already since for the past couple of years, we've seen most media be, if not with the state directly, but clearly pro-state. And that's going to be, I think, more and more the case moving forward. Independent media, a lot of the independent media here is also pro-government. Any kind of opposition media or media that doesn't support the government, even by just being neutral, is less likely to be able to operate in Egypt moving forward, according to what this law looks like on its face.
Now, just before I let you go, Heather, I do have to ask, since it's Egypt and it involves journalists, do you think that this new anti-terrorism law could affect the retrial of the journalists? I mean, we did see, for instance, when the Muslim Brotherhood was tagged a terrorist organization, and they were said to be aiding a terrorist organization, sort of the law was backdated in that case. So now that we're seeing that journalists could be fined between 200,000 to 500,000 for contradicting official accounts of, for instance, militant attacks, do you think it might in any way affect the direction in which this trial might be going?
It's not really clear whether it can, but I did ask one lawyer about this today, an Egyptian lawyer, and he said there's one possibility that he thinks could be important, in that in the past, defendants have been able to take advantage of new laws passed during their cases. So it might be, and this is a big might, it might be possible for the journalists in this case to try to change their crime to what it would be under the new law, which is printing information that is not in line with the state story, to potentially try to commute any sentence they would get into a fine as opposed to a sentence. So, but I think what those journalists are really hoping for is a full acquittal.
Well, I guess we just have to wait and see, but for now, we're very grateful for your updates. Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you.
The Voice of America's Heather Murdoch reporting from Cairo. Now to other stories. South African athlete Oscar Pistorius could be a relatively free man come August the 21st, and that's this Friday. The 29-year-old athlete is expected to wear an electronic tracking tag when he is released on Friday after serving 10 months of a 5-year sentence for killing his model and law graduate girlfriend Reeva Steenkamp on Valentine's Day back in 2013. His release is in line with South Africa's sentencing guidelines that say non-dangerous prisoners should spend only 1/6 of a custodial sentence behind bars. Pistorius is due to serve the rest of his term in custodial supervision, and that's a form of house arrest. Meanwhile, South African state prosecutors filed an appeal today against the verdict of culpable homicide passed on the athlete for killing his girlfriend, and they're saying that he should have been convicted of murder instead. Dozens of suspected Somali Al-Shabaab fighters swept into a Kenyan village and lectured locals for at least 2 hours before disappearing into a nearby forest without attacking anyone. Residents of Basuba village in the coastal region of Lamu say the militants, who numbered about 50, warned them against boarding any police or military vehicles because they targeted them for attacks. This is very different from the usual modus operandi of the group, which has made a series of deadly raids in Kenya since Kenyan troops first entered Somalia to fight them back in 2011. The group has said it will continue until Nairobi withdraws the troops, which is now part of an African Union peacekeeping force. Well, this is not the first time the group has actually lectured Kenyans. We did see one back on May the 21st in which Al-Shabaab preached jihad at Garissa's mosque. And then on August the 16th, Al-Shabaab also warned Kenyan villagers to shun police. That's the latest, which we just brought you. So we've seen 2 occasions where Al-Shabaab has actually lectured Kenyans without resorting to violence. We go live to Kenya right now, where the secretary for the Kenya Christian People's Forum, we will have her in a moment. We'll be standing by for Ann Kiyoko. But for now, let's just bring you some of the highlights of today. We're going to take a quick break now. When we come back, we'll bring you the latest from the local scene. Please stay with us.